everyone, welcome back to another episode of Reinventing Finance, as usual with my lovely and well-humored co-host, Tom. Tom, how are you today?
Thank you, especially after this introduction.
Yeah. As usual, we're not all by ourselves in our little echo chamber. We have a guest where I have to, I'll be honest, I was really looking forward to this one. Inas from Tomorrow, not Tomorrow Bank, but Tomorrow. Welcome in our humble abode. How are you?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really grateful to be here today. I'm really excited to talk to you guys. I'm feeling pretty well actually today, even though my daughter today is ill at home, so I had to improvise a little bit. Yeah, so I'm at my home office today, and my daughter was already very curious to understand what I'm going to do here, silently locked into my room. And I tried to explain her, what a podcast is. And
how did you explain that? How old is your daughter, if you don't mind me asking? And how do you explain what a podcast actually is?
Yeah, she's 6 years old, and I told her, you can listen to it afterwards on Spotify, and Spotify, sometimes she's listening to children's songs, etc. And so she asked me whether I'm going to sing. Yeah.
Please don't.
And no, it's different. We're gonna talk. Yeah. And then she asked me whether she could join in today. She would really be keen to join in. I said, no, you need to stay outside today. So just that.
But yeah, of course. I mean, it's but that's what you consume on Spotify. You sing, right? You sing.
Exactly.
Okay. That's Ines, again, thank you so much for taking the time. In full disclosure, I'm a customer. I'm a big fan of your work. But maybe why don't you briefly introduce yourself and what you guys are doing at Tomorrow?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my name is Ines. I'm one of the 3 founders of Tomorrow, and basically, maybe to start, maybe I need to go a little bit back, maybe and tell a little bit of what I've been doing before Tomorrow. But before Tomorrow, I set up a software as a service company. It was my first startup. We're developing cloud software for big food companies to help them make their supply chains more transparent and trace products back. And I grew the company over a course of 10 years. So we had a team of approximately 100 people. And at some point in time, I really asked myself, whether I'd want to do that for the next 10 years. And increasingly, as an entrepreneur, you always love to solve problems, right? And increasingly, I saw there are a lot of, ecological and societal problems out in the world. And my attention got increasingly drawn into those topics. And so I really decided then one day to the next that I need to jump off my own business and start something completely new. And at that point, I didn't know what, to be honest, but I said I want to do something that really creates some additional true impact or positive impact. And at that point, I started investing my own money, or wanted to invest my own money, and I wanted to do it in a sustainable way. And then I figured out, doing that isn't so easy, but we're gonna talk about that, I think today, and that sparked the idea really of creating a sustainable banking platform, really. And I did that together with my 2 co-founders, Michael and Jakob. And we want to basically bring sustainable finance to the middle of society, or into the middle of society, and make it really easy. Yeah, and that's why we created Tomorrow. So Tomorrow is basically a banking app, right? So you create a bank account within a few minutes, really simple, and it's fun to use. And we're making everything extremely transparent. So you see in real time, basically, how much money sits on all our bank accounts, and what do we finance with it? Yeah, and of course we guarantee that we only finance industries that contribute towards our climate goals. So things like renewable energies, or social housing, or sustainable mobility, etc. And we don't fund, things like fossil fuels, etc.
With the deposits, you mean, right?
With the deposits, exactly. Yeah. So that's basically the core of our business. Yeah?
And so what I liked, because it was really interesting when what really drew me to join Tomorrow was one, you had the paid version where you have a personal CO2 offset. Right. So it was like an easy forcing function, because it's kind of this thing. Should I do it? I'll do it when it comes due. And you're kind of reluctant to go, I'm now just gonna buy that subscription for, I don't know, Atmosphere or something like that. And I felt, you know what, this is good. I can check. It's probably, I'm probably spending whatever it is, 15, 20 euros in a less sustainable way someplace else. So, this is good. What I also really liked, and this is what I told my wife, was, and maybe if you could explain, because there is of every card transaction, there's a little, I don't know whether it's still called interchange, but there's certain card transactions that you do. And so you make money, or someone makes money by running transactions through. And I think what you do, but please correct me if I'm wrong, is passing part of that, towards funding, sustainable finance. And then I thought, my daughter is 2.5 years old, and I told my wife, it's like, listen, I'm not waking up and wanting to change another bank account, right? I have different, there's cool stuff on Netflix, so it's a good book to read. But at the very least, whenever we shop at Edeka or the supermarket of your choice, that should be very easy fix to do. That should be, can we tell, my daughter's called Maxima. Can we tell her to say, that was too inconvenient for us to just do the same thing, but shop. And then you have this rounding up function, which again, you allocate. And I thought, I get that, that alone is not going to get us out of the hole we dug ourselves in. But that is a very good first step, and it creates certain types of awareness. And that's what I like. It's like, listen, that, we don't stop there, but that's a good start. And I was the one who would never go for paid bank account, or, I just didn't see the value in that.
Yeah. It's very, very good to hear that. Yeah. So we try to use a lot of micro moments, within the app and within everyday life to do some small, positive impact. And I think what you described is, when you go out shopping, so every time you pay with a card, typically banks receive, the so-called interchange fee. So it's basically paid by the vendor eventually, and we use part of that money. And we directly invested in projects that contribute to renaturation. So at the moment, we have a huge project in South Africa where we are renaturating former grassland, where at the moment it's very hard to cultivate anything on it. So we are recultivating spec boom plants there, for example, and absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere and pushing it into plants and back into the soil. So that's one area. And the other area is, every time you shop, you have the option to configure that you do a so-called roundup. Yeah? So you round up automatically to the next euro. So if you pay €3.60, then you round up to €4, and those 40 cents, they are directly to our Tomorrow Foundation, which is a nonprofit company. And this company directs then this money to dedicated projects. So we always have campaigns for certain projects. So the last projects, last project we ran, for example, we collected €150,000 for a so-called container. So you can think of it like a container that has a solar roofing, and that runs electric cooling system, and it's used primarily in the global south to store freshly harvested products. Yeah, because typically in extreme heat, the product quality deteriorates very, very quickly. Yeah, and so we can extend the crop life after being harvested, and increase also the financial means of farm workers, who harvest the products. So that's one project, for example, and we have a very exciting upcoming project that we're going to announce, I think, in the next few days. That's going to be really, really, really cool. So this is two examples, and the third one maybe is something around CO2 footprinting. So whenever we shop something, the question is, what kind of negative impact are we causing actually with our purchasing behavior? And what we've launched is an automatic CO2 footprint calculator. So every time you go shopping your groceries, for example, or in case you have a gasoline run car, you fuel up your car, you can directly see in real time for that specific transaction how much CO2 has that specific transaction emitted, and therefore also give you more transparency on what impact your personal lifetime has.
May I ask the additional question to this CO2 footprint?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if you dive a little bit into this whole literature, then it's much more about, let's say, true pricing, huh?
Yeah.
So it's not only CO2, because we have a lot of other problems as well.
Correct.
Biodiversity, water, etc., natural materials, etc. So, and there are already some, I think, retail chains in Scandinavia experimenting with this on a large scale. Do you also think to implement that as well? Because it goes much further than only CO2.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah. So with the CO2 footprinting, I think that was the first step. And we worked very closely together with a fintech based, not a fintech, sorry, but yeah, you could almost call it a fintech actually, but a startup from Berlin called Ecolytic. And Ecolytic specialized basically in enriching transactional data, and to calculate impact, the impact that this transaction have. And they started with CO2 footprinting, but they are stretching that at the moment really into other areas. And they're about, to also do some kind of impact scoring that doesn't only include CO2, but other factors. So it's definitely something I think that we're looking at. It's not ready yet to be rolled out, I think, in a convenient way, but it's definitely something we would directly integrate once this is available.
Do you know this example from Scandinavia, where you just when you go into a supermarket? I don't know if it was Sweden or something like that, and then you go out and it's on your, let's say, payments. It's just integrated, so it just tells you. It gives you much more information. So there must be a kind of integration already going on, because you have to store those data and to connect them.
Yeah, it's a good point. So definitely something I think to look at. If something like that is already available through an API that we can consume, for example.
Must be.
To my knowledge, there is no API yet fully there that does that, but definitely worthwhile having a chat with Ecolytic around this, because it's very interesting, to see that. And I have seen examples also from Netherlands. I think there's a very interesting vegetables and fruits wholesaler called Eosta in the Netherlands. They're very really pioneer in this topic, and many years back they already calculate the true cost, for example, of an avocado.
Yeah, correct.
And sometimes it's really shocking to see that, to be honest.
Great.
But so the general premise, and I think you've mentioned that quite well, is part of a contribution to a carbon neutral society is creating awareness every single time you consume. And that is one of the kind of attack vectors that you chose for yourself, to make, and then expand off of that, obviously. Now, I guess, and other than that, your business model currently is that, similar of like a banking platform business model, but with a very clear purpose-driven, and thus, attractive proposition for, I'd say people like me, right? I can send money, it works. I can pay, it works. It does what it needs to do, but it is something that allows me to make a choice once and then just continue to do it rather than having to do that all the time. You also, and I believe, I'm not a crowdfunding specialist, but you recently, and I think it was your second or third crowdfunding, you raised, I think, 3.5 million in 48 hours. So first of all, congrats.
Thank you very much.
I don't think that is normal. At least it's, probably in the top percentile. Why crowdfunding? Why did you choose that level of funding?
I think first of all, I think it's important to understand that Tomorrow is very community driven. So we are in very, very close contact with our user base, and I think from day one. So our initial users, they helped us run a beta phase for our banking product, and you're aware of beta phases of many kinds, right? A lot of apps have beta phases. A beta phase for a banking app or a banking product is very, very special, right? Especially when nobody knew us before. So we started from scratch, and then we told the crowd out there, hey, this is our idea, and who would like to try our banking product? And so, we so very, very quickly had hundreds of people, who wanted to pilot the product with us. And then we gradually built, this product together with our community. We try to be very, very transparent in every aspect. So not only with our deposit, but for example, also with our roadmap. So we share on our website our product roadmap, what comes next. Users can vote, for certain functionality. We run, especially before COVID, we ran a lot of meetups regularly, where people were able to look behind the scenes, because typically banks are a black box. You don't know what's going on, how they use your money, right? How does it look behind the scenes? And we try to open that up.
Your office does not look like a normal bank. I was at your office, and it's not, your typical Sparkasse
exactly
office.
Yeah. So we really tried to open it up, and then it was really for us also very consequent, and consistent to say we not only raise funds, from wealthy business angels or funds, but also open up the opportunity for our existing user base, to participate, in a financial way from tomorrow's success, and to be more tied into tomorrow. And that was the initial idea. And when we did our first crowd investing round, I think we tested it out, and it resonated big time with our crowd. And now it's the third time we did it. So we did it now once a year for the last 3 years, always in fall time. And this year was the third time. And what we also are fundamentally doing different this time, it's not a traditional crowd investing, as you know it, because we are also changing our governance structure of tomorrow. And we are now in the process of establishing a dedicated board seat for a representative from our crowd. So there will be somebody sitting on our board in every single board meeting who is representing the crowd.
Like that, who's the guy in Roman times who could kind of who couldn't sit in the Senate, but was able to shout in?
Yeah,
I don't know, but
something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we have later time to talk about governance, I think there are also some other means of how we are very, very much different when it comes to governance. Yeah. Mm.
Are you, and I don't know whether it's public knowledge, do you share how much you've raised in total, and how much of that comes from, let's say, traditional venture, business angel, whatever money, and how much comes from your user base? Do you share that information?
Yeah, I think in the crowd investing prospectus, I think there you can find the latest information. And we, since it's a convertible loan structure that where we will fix the price in the next funding round, it's not 100% accurate, the exact percentages, but we give an estimate on how this gonna look like.
Convertible loan.
Sorry?
Convertible loan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But my question was, can you share how much you've totally raised and how much comes from crowdfunding or traditional investors? Do you know that top of your head, just out of interest? If it's not something you share publicly, that's fine. I was just curious.
Yeah, it's definitely something I would need to look up. But total funding is around 40 million plus that we have raised. And in terms of money, I think with the existing with this funding round, the crowd is now pretty much the biggest contributor now in terms of money, which is also the reason why we said it's a matter of fairness, that we provide the crowd a seat at the table.
Yes,
awesome.
Goes a little bit in the direction of cooperative structures, huh? If the crowd becomes
I think
bigger and bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's going in that direction. Yeah, it's still fundamentally different than a cooperative. Because in Germany there are a lot of strings attached to that, and also a lot of inflexibility comes with that. But it's already going in that direction, and that's why we said it's so important. Yeah, that we create a seat at the table for the crowd.
But maybe I believe you are structured as a B-corp. Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Could you just briefly outline what that means? And I think the why is pretty clear, to be honest. But if you could just briefly explain, what is a B-corp, and what does that even mean? Sure. Because there's, would you recommend that, or under which conditions would you recommend that to another entrepreneur, or in which case rather not, because most things are trade-off.
Yeah. So when we founded Tomorrow very early on, we thought a lot about governance as such. Yeah, and I think when you talk about B Corp, it's very important to talk about governance. And for those who don't understand the term governance, because it's a very cryptic word, it's basically organizing the way how decisions are being made in an organization, right? And typically in a startup very early on, all the decisions are made by the founders because they own typically the majority of the shares. And then as you go on and do financing round after financing round, typically the shares of the investors increases and the shares of the founders decreases. And that means that the voting power of the founders decreases, right? And so the question is then who decides, yeah, and how are decisions being made? And so we said we founded Tomorrow for a reason, yeah, not because we wanted to make a quick buck and become rich. It was really because we wanted to change the financial industry, yeah. And so we said it's very, very important that Tomorrow stays true to its cause and to its mission long term, independent from the shareholding structure. And so the first thing that we did was we included a board seat No? So the board is basically the decision-making organ of the company. We created a board seat for impact, for the topic of impact. So we created an impact council that consists out of 4 people. They're totally independent from tomorrow. They don't have any shareholding in tomorrow. They come from different sectors, from with a social background or a university background, impact background. And there's one person that gets sent in the board from this impact council, and that has the task to always speak up for impact, for our impact cause. Yeah? So they are not interested in our balance sheet. They're just interested in maximizing impact. So I think that's very important. So this is one advice I would also give to impact-oriented startups out there, to create such a board suite. And then now we come to the B Corp. It's a benefit corporation, right? That's what it stands for.
Yeah? Just one question. So it is a board seat with voting power, not just a board observer.
No, it's voting power. Huh?
Thank you.
And in our current setup, it's like, we have 2 investor seats. We have 2 founder seats or votes, and we have 1 impact vote. So that's And at that time, that definitely was very innovative. Or it doesn't. I don't know any other startup that does it this way. And now B Corp comes in also.
Ines, may I ask a question? Has there been, and obviously, has there been a point whereby because you guys obviously started with the best intentions, right? And you wanted to be impact driven, but has there been a point where you either changed your mind or had to go around the tree in a different way than you anticipated? So has that impact seat impacted your decision making, either by virtue of convincing you or by virtue of forcing your hand?
Yeah, I think so far I would say no. But I think we wanted to make everything future proof. Because at the moment, all of us 3 founders having 2 votes in that in that board are there, right? And we are so impact driven. But I think it gives the impact vision more emphasis also to our investors, because they know, right? And it's setting the scene also. Even when we talk to new investors, they look at our governance structure and say, okay, wow, that's different. And then we also tell them, look, if this is not how you operate, maybe then there is no right fit between us. So it's setting the scene. And to make it even more absurd, we also have a board seat, but not a voting share, but just listening in or speaking up for a representative from our employees. So a representative from our employees sits also on the board. And now to close the circle, now to come back to B Corp, because B Corp also sets some minimum standards for governance and also transparency and how you track your impact performance. And so when you become a B Corp certified company, basically you need to assure that in your articles of association of your company, so which is the DNA of your company, right? That you write in there that you not only commit to increasing the shareholder value, but that you're committed to really respect the interests of other stakeholders. And so that means you commit to nature, you commit to society, and you open up your governance to really respect that. And that's a commitment. And why are these articles of association so important? Because whenever you do a funding round, your potential investors, they're going to read that, right? And read it through. And there might be investors say, okay, what is this now? Well, what does it mean? And they need to commit to it. So I think it's very important. And it gives you on top some standards on disclosing information, on your website, on your impact report, and tracking your impact performance. And I can only recommend that to any company out there. It just sets some minimum standards, for reporting on impact and disclosing that information.
Awesome. You recently launched a new product, which I believe is an active equity fund with your ESG fund. Could you, and let me, just conscious of time, and we can circle back to that, exactly how you dissect certain things. Because I think I bugged Jakob on LinkedIn, and he was actually, it's very well reported, and everyone who can read, can follow that up. But maybe just two things. One, how do you, based on your criteria, would you invest in Shell or not?
Yeah.
So because is it like a best in class? Because it's hard, right? And I don't think there's a right or wrong in there, but maybe not Aramco. I don't know. That would stretch it. I would imagine. But if I don't know if Shell is the best example, but I believe European oil companies seem to be a little bit more progressive than the other ones. But who knows? Would you say Shell yes or no? This kind of best in class. Or let's say if McDonald's uses less meat than Burger King, would then how do you make that choice?
Yeah. Maybe to cut it short, we would definitely say no to all of these cases.
Okay.
To start with, because I think we have a very strict interpretation of our sustainability criteria, and we don't consider ourselves as a classical ESG fund. Because I think there's a huge debate out there around ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance. And the problem here is that typically ESG funds, they look at environmental, social, and governance data, and they make certain decisions based on that. But they consider it in their decision making, which leads to the fact that they would pick the more sustainable oil and gas producer, or they would look at best in class. What is the most sustainable automotive producer out there who basically still produces 95% of its fleet is fossil fuel based engines, but they're the most sustainable. So that's we don't do that. Well, the key difference, what we do is we have clear impact goals set for the fund. And I think I would recommend anyone who wants to invest in a sustainability fund to check the criteria of this fund and whether they have an impact goal. And we clearly say we want to support the sustainable development goals, first of all, really actively contribute to them. And we want to contribute to the Paris climate goals. And then there are certain ways of how we guarantee that with positive criteria, negative criteria, 1.5 degree measurements, etc.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question concerning the future, because let's say if I think about, for instance, Triodos, which was founded, I think 50 years ago. The question always is, are you able to scale these impact companies? We have by the way, exactly the same topics in our company. So a lot of things you say are totally similar in our company. Yeah. But the question always is, are we able to scale those impact companies? And most of the time they are not able to do so. So Triodos is a very good example. Became one of the leading sustainable banks in the world, but they're still too small and have come also into difficulty. So what do you think are the biggest threats for tomorrow in the future? Or you can put it in a positive way. What are the milestones which have to be tackled to make it a success story?
I think what is very important, I think when you talk about Triodos, and I think the same applies also to tomorrow, it's not only about the achievements that these specific bank or banking provider has created within its own user community, but it's really creating a blueprint, for the whole financial industry. And I would definitely say so that Triodos has left its impact, and a lot of other banks maybe have copied approaches, and the same applies to us. A lot of the things we do, we try to share as much as possible, and we have a lot of other leaders from traditional banks that also talking to us, picking up ideas, and that's why it's not only focusing on what Tomorrow has achieved with its user base, but really creating this kind of blueprint now for our stocks fund, where we try to set the impact benchmark much higher, and to show new ways of how we can measure also impact, and really change the finance industry with it. Of course, we want to scale as much as we can as Tomorrow, and go beyond Germany, and really bring sustainable finance to the middle of society, right? And do everything we can in our power to do that through our product, through increasing our user base, but also winning others to join the movement.
So would that mean, so if the ultimate goal, right, is to create as much first, second, third degree impact on getting all of us out of the gutter, so we can look at our children with a straight face in 10, 20 years time, have you considered taking that step a little bit further and going, Tomorrow is a blueprint, but let's say, rather than the Deutsche Sparkassen wasting millions and millions and trying to recreate number 26, which then just doesn't scale, and just poof, just to kind of go, here's our blueprint, and we can enable digital finance for Deutsche Bank, for other banks, as a white, you come from a software as a service, as a kind of white labeling thing, so they can they don't have to recreate everything. So is there a B2B white label play for what you're doing in the future to further that second degree impact, or would that draw too much attention away from being, just follow us, but you're not gonna figure this out yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we are a clear B2C focused company, right? And we want to create great user experience, and maybe the tech side you would be able, to do to white label that, but that's not enough, right? That's a problem. So I think you need to change the DNA of the company. And if you look at the deposits, every euro that sits on a bank account is managed, traditionally by the books of that respective bank. So it's very hard to white label that. Nevertheless, we are always very open-minded. So, for example, with our fund now is structured in a way that any other bank can sell it as well. So you don't necessarily need to have a Tomorrow bank account to purchase our Tomorrow Better Future Stocks Fund. So any other bank out there could offer that. And since we are very, very, very transparent on what titles are in that fund exactly, and how our criteria look like, it would be very, very easy for others to inspire, to get inspired and maybe adopt similar approaches as well.
We have a hard stop today, so I need to skip one question that, but it's a product question. It's not that I don't think it's that relevant for this audience. But if we're kind of taking a step back, and you as an entrepreneur, but also as a citizen, right? Which recommendation do you give, let's say, to the first group? And to me, entrepreneur is not just, Berlin startup entrepreneur, entrepreneur is anyone being able to, garner resources and charter, new paths. So it can be an entrepreneur, it can be a manager. I find that distinction somewhat a little bit old-fashioned. But to that group, but also to all of us just being citizens, because you clearly took a radical step, leaving a really well working business to start something else. But so what are your 2 cents to either group?
So just to get the question right, the 2 groups, you would say the normal citizen is for you one group, and the other one is the entrepreneur,
entrepreneur, or
manager,
corporate manager, decision maker.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I think to start maybe with the first group, the entrepreneur or the business manager. I think we have a so-called narrative that we always use. I think that in the last decade, especially startups wanted to become the next unicorn, right? The next company that's valued at $1 billion, on private markets. So formerly companies like Facebook or Uber, etc. Who said, let's grow as fast as we can. And Mark Zuckerberg even said, if you're not breaking things, you're not moving fast enough. So it's that thing, growth, at any cost. And I would say that time is over. It's not about just maximizing profits and becoming the next unicorn. We need to become more zebras. And we call it, we need a new role model that is not the unicorn. We call it the zebra. There's the zebra movement that you can also look up on the internet, where we say the zebra is the better ideal, because it's a true animal. It's very resilient. It's black and white. It stands for profitability and positive impact. And it's also a herd animal. So it does things in a community together, right? And zebras have been there for millions of years, and they're gonna be there for the next million years. And you cannot divert a zebra from its course, because you can actually not ride on a zebra. So and it's I think that becoming more a zebra organization than a unicorn organization. And I think we need to change that narrative. And any step in that direction is the right step. So you can do mini steps. You don't necessarily need to do that huge jump, but try to become more a zebra than a unicorn. That would be my first advice to that first group. And the second group is, as a consumer, I think that there are 2 levels. One is to be more conscious about your purchasing decisions, maybe reflect a little bit on that, to try to do it in a more sustainable way. We have a huge impact with our consumption decisions every day. So whether you need to buy a car, yes, no, ideally not. But if you need to buy one, then there is a sustainability scale on that, whether you buy an electric car or not, for example. But it's also the decision where and how do you bank, for example. And we talked a lot about finances and banking banking also has a huge impact on where your money lies, what your money finances every day, and there to take a very active decisions and where you bank, with whom you bank, and there are a lot of decisions. How the clothing, etc., travel.
So would it be? And I think I like the unicorn zebra, and I've heard this, but I really like how you've explained that. And maybe from a consumer citizen point of view, the old era was maybe Amazon Prime, convenience to its ultimate form, and maybe now it's more just be aware. And it sucks. I mean, we're not, people don't do it because they want to be bad people, but it's complicated. Be more aware about what you buy and what comes out of it, and be aware of what you throw away, because all of these things matter. And I think so. I don't have the zebra analogy for the don't be an Amazon Prime. Because I honestly, I feel I would love to be able to have an Amazon Prime option to say, make it as ecologically friendly. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I don't need my book tomorrow. I'm still, I don't actually need 5 parcels a day.
Yeah.
I don't need that, right? And so I feel, and when I tell in these conversations, it's like, should we turn down heating or not? I'm just like, you have to make your own choice. If you're in sync with whatever you're doing, go ahead, right? But ultimately be more conscious, because this is not a choice about, this is not really a choice. The choice is going to be out of our hands. It's really around the more we can do now, whilst being, the kind of, if you like, free without a forced hand, or at some point it'll be forced upon us.
And I think maybe one good narrative to connect to the zebra narrative is that we as consumers need to support more zebras. Huh? And the great thing is there are so many fantastic new startups. Yeah? So whether it's a new startup creating a sustainable backpack, or a new bicycle, or cargo bike, or a new food delivery service, that's sustainable, and there are even shipping alternatives, sustainable ones. And it's those young companies, that come with a new mindset, new generation of founders, that not only have that profit in mind, but they want to change the world for the better, and support them, give them a chance. And hey, what do we have to lose as consumers? Let's try it out. And even in the energy market, look at your energy provider. There's so many cool startups, ecological, energy providers out there coming up with fantastic new concepts. And and you can look at this whole, whatever it is you consume, there are some sustainable alternatives out there.
I think this is really good. I don't know, Tom. I think this is a really good place to unfortunately have to stop a podcast that I would, but I think
it was a good conclusion. But I mean, there are so many topics which could be interesting to dive into deeper, but it's a question of time, conscious of time. Yeah, my co-host used to say.
Ines, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure and a privilege, and continue doing what you're doing. This has been as much fun as I hoped it would be.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was also really fun for me, and it's crazy how quickly the time passes. Yeah.
And just one final thing, and I think this is something to also bear in mind, and hopefully this came through when listening to this. I have very high positive energy right now, because it is very natural to find a way and do something good with social animals. So I think, kind of listen to how you feel when you're doing certain things, because, it sucks being out of sync. Just is not a great feeling. Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.